Welcome to Ignite Intimacy, a podcast exploring intimacy, romantic relationships, sexuality, and the all of everything that relates to these hot topics. We're going in. You ready? This is your host, Miss La. Let's do this. Red flush to lips, as desire for him wildly dive bombs her. Downward shooting and blazing white-hot flames of wanting over her mountain ranges and fertile plains. Deeper he burns a path inside her, passionately melting her from within. His breath warm on the trail to taste the honey dripping from her. Devoted kisses upon her velvet skin unlocks her Aphrodite rapture, her legs welcoming him into her. He humbly implores shelter sought between her southern wet lips, as tidal waves crash against them from tits to tip. Lost within the mystery of her Bermuda Triangle, he is blind, afraid of the building climax inside him. Her undulating hips guiding his blade to her slip. Together, they sway the waves of passion. Red flush to lips, as desire for her wildly dive bombs him. Welcome, 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 everyone. This is Miss La, and I am your host for this brand spanking new podcast called Ignite Intimacy. On this very first episode, I'll basically be giving the scoop on what to expect as far as our format, guests, and topics we'll be covering in the weeks and months to come on Ignite Intimacy. Definitely want to bring you into the mix of this whole vibrant and dynamic topic of igniting intimacy in our romantic relationships and our lives while exploring sexuality while we're at it. Because why not, right? First of all, I want to give thanks to a dear, dear sister of mine who wrote that piece, Red Flush. We'll definitely be bringing in elements of stories and poems and experiences that you, our listeners, write in that we'll be sharing live on the podcast throughout the next several months. So, you know, all those taboo subjects that you generally may not talk about, or maybe like you talk about in private or in secret, or you keep most of it to yourself because, I don't know, maybe you're ashamed or embarrassed or aren't sure if your friends will be totally into it or open or accept you after you tell them some freaky stuff about you or whatever. You know, fantasies, affairs, jealousy, sex parties, pornography, self-pleasuring. Yes, all of that stuff. And so much more. This is what we'll be diving into on the Ignite Intimacy podcast. This podcast is really for all of the curiosity seekers out there, those who've had wild, wonderful, naughty, amazing experiences, and those who've only dreamed of them and who are so desiring to really ignite more intimacy, more connection, more romantic experiences, and more of what we all truly want to experience in this realm in our more intimate and romantic relationships. So let's start with the definition of intimacy. Intimacy means close familiarity or friendship. So closeness, togetherness, affinity, rapport, attachment, familiarity, friendliness, affection, warmth, confidence. It can also be a cozy, private atmosphere or an intimate act, especially with regards to sexuality and sexual intercourse, lovemaking, that type of thing, which, you know, we're all aware of and have experienced in some way, shape, or form. So I'm curious about you. Have you ever wondered whether human beings are really meant to be monogamous, like truly monogamous? And I'm curious, how many people you actually know in your life that you think have had long-term fulfilling relationships where they actually have been monogamous and just with their partner. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be in an open relationship or to explore a polyamorous lifestyle? Do you even know what those terms mean? Have you ever wondered why guys or girls you like are never the ones chasing you? And curious about why you seem to be religiously single while all of your friends are in long-term relationships, getting married, having kids? Are you secretly jealous of your friend who seems to jump from one long-term relationship to another with great guys who treat her really well? Do you feel like a complete doofus when it comes to anything romantic and wonder how you can get some swagger in your step and in the bedroom? Do you want to woo women but have no idea what to say, do, or how to act to get them to say yes to a romantic date or even just a hot makeout session? Have you ever wondered what it would be like to attend a sex party with your partner, but maybe you're too embarrassed to ask? Have you had a difficult time talking with your partner about sex and about what you really want, what you like, what you don't like, and try a little bit more of this and a little less of that? Feel shameful about that STD you picked up from an old girlfriend and have no idea how to have that conversation or when to have it? Well, if these or any other questions that would kind of follow along the lines of these questions and curiosities have come to heart and mind for you, then you are absolutely in the right place. Ignite Intimacy is a weekly podcast that was developed to really and truly dive deep into the realms of intimacy, romantic relationships, and sexuality, and the plethora of issues, ahas, taboos, fantasies, and psychological impacts that go along with these topics, including but definitely not limited to jealousy, infidelity, shame, guilt, the secret sauce to a long-term, joy-filled, fulfilling relationship, open relationships, polyamory, attachment, monogamy, sex parties, self-pleasuring, the freedom that can come with transparency, honesty versus dishonesty. Is it really that, what you don't know can't hurt you? Or is it better to just be totally open and upfront? The long-term psychological impacts of keeping secrets or having affairs, powerful ways to communicate in our intimate and romantic and sexual relationships, desires, chasing versus attracting, and so much more. I mean, the topics related to intimacy, romantic relationships, and sexuality are so huge, so diverse, and the list is long. So this is just sort of like a starting point for us. And it's really exciting to think about what will come as we continue to open up to this grand, huge topic. So on the podcast, we'll be featuring special guests, experts, doctors, authors, creatives, and everyday people who've got stories and experiences to tell and opinions to share about love, romance, intimacy, and sexuality. Of course, our guests are not always going to be sharing their views and their perspectives that align with Ignite Intimacy's own views and perspectives. However, we welcome the dynamic array of thoughts, perspectives, views, opinions on these subjects because there are many. And I think that the more you get into the mix, the more interesting it can be. We'll also be asking you, our audience, to send us topics that you'd like to see covered on this podcast, questions that you want answered. So think like advice column style, and juicy or interesting or even heartbreaking stories, but where you learned something really powerful and amazing through maybe like a major heartbreak, or some juicy, awesome, gorgeous story that you feel comfortable having me read on air so that our listeners can enjoy the pleasurable experience that maybe you have. So we'll be reading these stories and questions and insights from you, our listeners online, to light more fire up under these topics and on this platform. The point and mission is to get this conversation out into the world in a much bigger and more transparent way. This is not a typical interview style program. It's really an ongoing conversation. So my guests and I will go back and forth and roll with the energy and topics as they present themselves. For now, it may be rare that you hear one episode that is solely focused on one specific topic. However, the format will change and evolve over time. We're just getting started. So I want to really have a better clarity around what's working, what our audience is enjoying to hear about. And if you really want to have more topic related, episodes, then I'm totally fine playing with that as well. But for now, most of the episodes coming up are going to be a blend of different topics that touch on intimacy, romantic relationships, and sexuality. So get ready, my people. There has been an undeniable force that has been working through me to bring something like Ignite Intimacy into the world. This is such a powerful time that we're living in right now. And I know that the time is now definitely to create additional platforms that can hold space for these types of conversations. The more that I've connected with other people about relational and sexual experiences, I've really realized how many of us are having our own experiences, curiosities, desires, and relationship to these topics, but maybe not talking about it as transparently or as openly as we'd like to. Many times our thoughts, feelings, desires stay hidden within us in these like neatly little locked boxes for no one to see. And maybe it's not neat at all. Maybe it's messy and crazy and it's anxiety producing and you just don't know where to turn to or who to turn to or how to just like be like, blah, just get it out and start talking about what's really going on inside when it comes to our thoughts, desires, experiences, and what we really truly want to desire and experience more of with regards to intimacy, romantic relationships, and sexuality. So I've been realizing that even though we're in the 21st century and literally have access to information about anything we could possibly want to know about via Google and the internet and YouTube and everything else, I find that there's definitely a gap between what seems like a smaller group of people that are having these open, transparent dialogues about the topics that we're talking about. But it seems like there's this huge other group of people who are not having these conversations. And I feel like the more that we can bring our needs, desires, worries, passions, fantasies, when it comes to intimacy, romantic relationships, and sexuality out into the open, our world is going to be a more fully expressed place. And it will allow each and every one of us to just continue to step more powerfully and transparently forward on our own individual and collective paths. So I'm always curious when I meet people because I have this thing in my life and people confide in me in some of I've had people pretty regularly tell me that they're sharing something with me that they've either never told anyone or they have only shared with a couple of people. And so people tend to come to me when they've got issues in their relationships or, with other types of matters that touch on sexuality and intimacy. And so what I've realized is it's interesting. I have this experience as well where like I'll be friends with, I have a lot of couple friends, and it's interesting as well because I'm one of those like religiously single people up until this point in my adult life. Even though I've had a ton of amazing experiences with different people and a couple of relationships, I tend to be more like a free agent. And so I've got a lot of couple friends, and sometimes I have couple friends who are having issues, and both of them will talk to me about the issues so I can kind of see straight down the middle and identify what's going on in the relationship and where some of the gaps are. The issue is they both don't know that they're both talking to me. So, but what this has helped me do is just gain some insight into the challenges that people are facing in relationships. Cause I say to them, well, why aren't you having this conversation with your partner? Like, is it possible for you two to sit down and start really talking openly about what's going on for you and what you really desire? And, fine, you may hurt that other person's feeling, but you may also plant a seed or open something up within them that would have never opened had you not had the courage to just come straight and come forward with it. So it's always surprising to me when some folks would rather break off a solid relationship than broach the topic of their desire to say, let's say maybe someone wants to bring a third party into the bedroom or discover new ways to ignite romantic, intimate experiences in their relationship in order to grow closer. But I don't know, maybe they feel stupid or silly or don't think their partner would be open to it. Or maybe, someone would like to explore having more of an open relationship. So instead of actually talking about these things with their partner, they just end the relationship. And then on the flip side, there are some folks who seem to stay in long-term, unhealthy, stale, unhappy relationships while screwing around on the side because they're afraid to either hurt their partner or be alone, and worry if maybe they'll never ever find another partner. I've seen friends and lovers and others living a lie, basically, and choosing to stay in relationships that are no longer serving them and their families positively because they're afraid. They're afraid to be transparent about what they really want, and they hang on for dear life, causing and experiencing way more heartbreak, frustration, and confusion than is actually necessary if they could just come out and say, look, this is where I'm at. This is what I want. And on the next side of that, there are people who have been courageous and who are speaking their minds and who are saying something's got to change. And this is what I'm feeling. And in one of our episodes coming up, I have a great episode with this powerful, amazing woman, Dana Saylor. And we talk all about this because she was married to a long-term partner and then things started to shift in that relationship. And she went for it. She had those open, transparent conversations with her then husband, and they experimented with some different things. And he was right there with her all the way along, having these conversations, open to it. And eventually they did decide to part ways, but they did it in a way that was really, respectful, honoring, and truly openly transparent. So another side of this all of these topics and this experience that we're having in this life is that we've all been spoon-fed terms, uses, abuses, lingo, and fantasies by the media, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, 10 ways to please your partner in bed, and, all these different articles and images that we see in the media, magazines, books, movies, our communities, and those that we choose to interact with in more intimate and sexual ways. We've been shamed and blamed, cursed and rejected, some of us infected and mostly disconnected. We want to be free to be who we really are. And although some of us are courageous to be fully seen, many of us still hide for fear of judgment and how our transparency will not only change our lives, but those of the lives around us and those who are closest to us, especially if it's someone that we've been in a long-term partnership with. And if there are kids involved, it can get complicated, and there's so many layers to it. Well, I'm here to remind you that without a doubt, the time is now to let our beautiful freak flags fly and allow our souls to shine and our voices to speak the truth that we've held on to for many of us way too long. You know how I know this? Everyone that I've mentioned this podcast to and the topics that we'll be adventuring into and exploring together, from New York City to Los Angeles and Oakland to Jamaica and beyond, light up and say, yes, oh my gosh, I want to have access to this podcast. Where can I find it? I'll listen to every episode. And that to me is just confirmation that there are other platforms and tons of books and different podcasts out there, that there's still a huge group of people who are either not aware of these other platforms and access to this information, or they just want more. They want more opportunities to touch into and dive into these topics and learn more about some of the things that they might be curious about and may not even know about. So there is definitely a theme building here and an interest in diving more fully into these topics. And we're taking the reins. We're going with it. And we're choosing to say yes to this vibration that is guiding us forward. So clearly, as a collective, we are not having these conversations enough, and I'm here to help change that. I'm a bit of an instigator, so I'm excited that I can instigating more conversations around these topics as we move forward here. So I want to share a little bit more about me, Miss La, your host. I have always been fascinated by the world of relational experiences because I feel like I've had my own dynamic and unique experience when it comes to these main topics, these sort of umbrella topics that we're going to be talking about: intimacy, romantic relationships, and sexuality. And I've always been so curious about so many different things when it comes to this realm. So I've always wondered what makes two people come together, break apart, stay single, attract many suitors and long-term relationships, or none at all. What makes some venture into the world of polyamory and open relationships, while others were born into a culture and society where polygamy is common. And if it's not a choice, it's something that these folks learn to live with. I've been meditating on these topics for quite some time now. And when January 2016 hit, an energy literally that was so big, much larger than me, began pulling me forward to explore all of these topics and more in an interactive and audio-based conversation that I could share with the public. So coming off of my first ever 6-month man pause, which I started in December 2015, and don't get it twisted. I did not say menopause. I said a man pause. I figured that it was the perfect time to launch the Ignite Intimacy podcast. What I believe to be true based on my own experiences and conversations with others is, again, that as a collective society, I don't think we're having enough transparent conversations about these topics, issues, and our own desires. By bringing this conversation to a larger audience with the intention to create more transparency and dialogue around these topics, there's a profound evolution that can and will occur in my life and our lives collectively. I know that our world will absolutely be a better place when more of us choose to stop living within a framework of like a lie or what we think other people want our lives to be, and instead choose to live in alignment with who we truly are at the core. This is something that I know I'm personally practicing on a day-to-day basis, on a moment-to-moment basis. It is so imperfect and it's so messy at times. However, I'm just doing my best to put my best foot forward and be open and transparent about all the things that are bubbling up within me. Because God, what do I have to lose, And what do you have to lose? I absolutely, truly look forward to seeing a world where more of us choose to live more out freely, openly about who we are as relational, intimate, and sexual creatures than hiding within where we hide behind a guise of what we think is acceptable by society's, our families, or our community's standards. I have a feeling and a deep, deep knowing that when we can level the playing field and realize that most likely every human being has been impacted in some way, shape, or form by some aspect of this conversation, even if just by a twinge of jealousy, that when we can truly just bring this conversation out into the open in our own lives and our own families and communities and in the world, that our world as a whole and our relationships will benefit tremendously and become more powerful and more of what they actually have the opportunity to be. This is, again, a very dynamic time in our life, in our world. And we're seeing that. There's a lot of strife. There's a lot of unrest. There's a lot of different groups of people pitting against each other, and rights and wrongs, and good and bad, and good and evil. And, it's time for us to come together, and to be in this world together on this path and saying yes to more of our truth and more of our deepest desires and needs. So relax, enjoy, open up, explore, and know that we are here for you. And we want to hear from you on top of it all. So if you have got some questions, topics you'd like to hear us discuss, if you've got a story that you'd like to share, if it's a sexy, juicy, yummy story, or if it's a crazy story, if it's a story about you coming clean with your partner about something that you've been holding for very long, and maybe something crazy happened as a result, or something awesome happened as a result, I'd love, love, love to hear from you. And I'd love to share some of these stories live online. So definitely holler at us at hello@igniteintimacy.com. The email again is hello@igniteintimacy.com. You can also check us out at igniteintimacy.com online. We want to know what's on your mind, what's in your heart, and again, which topics you'd like to explore with us on Ignite Intimacy. So give us a shout. Make sure to check in weekly for new episodes. And if you're digging this platform, the podcast, and the conversations that we're having, then please share this with your friends and hop over to iTunes, give us a review and a rating. And one thing is absolutely for sure, you are not alone. We're going to be on this adventure and this journey together in tandem, okay? So get ready, sit back, relax, and I am so excited and incredibly grateful that you have joined us for this very first episode of Ignite Intimacy. Stay tuned. We've got some goods and some juicy awesomeness, some powerful stuff coming your way. So stay tuned and we'll see you on the next one. All our best from Ignite Intimacy to you. Bless. Give thanks for tuning in to another conversation on the Ignite Intimacy podcast hotline. We love that you choose to spend your time with us. Check us out online at igniteintimacy.com and subscribe to us on iTunes. Also, tell your friends all about it. This beautiful music was arranged by Jason Pfaff and Mike Corey, and this podcast is produced by yours truly, Miss La. Give thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, let your light shine bright and ignite your intimacy.